October 14th, 1066. On a small hill in southern England, two armies clash in a battle that will decide the fate of a nation. One arrow, one king's death, and a single day of brutal fighting would forever change the course of British history. This is the story of the Battle of Hastings, and why, nearly 1,000 years later, its echoes are still all around us. What if I told you that the very words you're speaking, the laws that govern your country, and even the names on your street signs can be traced back to this one pivotal moment? It sounds incredible, but it's true. The Norman conquest wasn't just a change of king. It was a cultural, political, and social earthquake that completely remade England. Stick with me as we unravel how this medieval conflict is still shaping the modern world. To understand why Hastings was so crucial, we need to rewind to the beginning of 1066. In January, the English king, Edward the Confessor, died without an heir. This created a massive power vacuum. Three powerful men believed they had the right to the throne. First, there was Harold Godwinson, the most powerful earl in England, who was crowned king almost immediately. Then, across the North Sea, was Harald Hardrada, the fearsome Viking king of Norway, who believed he had a claim through a previous deal. And finally, in Normandy, France, was Duke William, who insisted that the late King Edward had promised him the throne years earlier. Three claimants, one crown. A collision was inevitable. Harold Godwinson, now King Harold II, knew he was in for a fight. He assembled his army, the famous Anglo-Saxon Fyrd and his elite housecarls, and prepared for an invasion from Normandy. But the first attack didn't come from the south. In September, Harold Hardrada and Harold's own exiled brother, Tostig, invaded northern England with a massive Viking fleet. King Harold had to act fast. He marched his army an astonishing 185 miles north in just 4 days, a truly remarkable feat for the time. He took the Vikings completely by surprise at a place called Stamford Bridge. The battle was a resounding victory for the English. Both Harold Hardrada and Tostig were killed, and the Viking threat to England was ended for good. It was a moment of triumph for King Harold. He had no time to celebrate. Just 3 days later, he received disastrous news. William of Normandy had finally landed on the south coast. Exhausted but determined, Harold rushed his army back down south, another grueling march of over 250 miles. He didn't wait to gather more troops, a decision that historians still debate today. Instead, he decided to face William head-on. He positioned his forces on top of a ridge known as Senlac Hill, forming a strong shield wall, a classic Anglo-Saxon defensive tactic. He had the high ground, a significant advantage. The stage was set for the Battle of Hastings. On the morning of October 14th, William's Norman army advanced. His forces were different from the English. He had archers, infantry, and crucially heavily armored knights on horseback. The battle raged all day. The Normans charged up the hill again and again, but the English shield wall held firm. It was a bloody, relentless stalemate. At one point, a rumor spread that William had been killed, causing panic in the Norman ranks. William had to lift his helmet and ride among his troops to prove he was still alive and rally them. The turning point came late in the afternoon. The Normans, either by trickery or genuine retreat, feigned a retreat. Some of the English soldiers, perhaps overconfident after holding their ground for so long, broke from their shield wall and charged down the hill in pursuit. This was the fatal mistake. The Norman knights turned around, cutting down the exposed English soldiers. The shield wall was now weakened. As dusk began to fall, the final act played out. The Norman archers were ordered to fire high, sending a deadly rain of arrows down onto the English lines. And it was during this volley that legend says King Harold was struck in the eye by an arrow and killed. With their king dead and their shield wall broken, the English resistance crumbled. The battle was over. William, from that day forward known as William the Conqueror, had won. So William was king. But what did that actually mean? Why do we say this one battle changed everything? Let's start with the most obvious change: the language. Before 1066, the people of England spoke Old English, a Germanic language. But William and his Norman followers spoke French. For the next 300 years, French became the language of the court, of government, law, and high culture. The ruling class spoke French, while the common folk continued to speak English. This created a unique linguistic blend. Two languages began to merge. English absorbed thousands of French words. Think about it. Basic everyday words like house, man, and eat are from Old English. But more sophisticated or official words like government, parliament, justice, and castle come from Norman French. Even our words for food show this divide. We raise a pig or a cow, Old English words, but when it's cooked and served at the table, it becomes pork or beef French words. This linguistic fusion is what created the rich, complex, and sometimes confusing language we call modern English. Without the Norman conquest, we would be speaking a language that sounds much more like German or Dutch. Next, let's talk about the political and social structure. William the Conqueror didn't trust the old Anglo-Saxon nobility, so he systematically replaced them. He seized their land and gave it to his loyal Norman barons. This completely reshaped the aristocracy of England. By the time William died, nearly all the land was owned by a new Norman elite. This established the feudal system in England, a rigid hierarchy with the king at the top, followed by his barons, knights, and then the peasants at the bottom. This system of land for loyalty would define medieval England for centuries. To manage his new kingdom, and let's be honest, to figure out how much tax he could collect, William commissioned a massive survey of the entire country. This incredible document, completed in 1086, was called the Domesday Book. It was an unprecedented inventory of every town, village, and farm, listing who owned what, how many people lived there, and what resources it had. It was so thorough that one contemporary writer said not one hide of land, nor one ox, nor one cow, nor one pig was left out. The Domesday Book is a priceless historical record, giving us an unparalleled snapshot of 11th century England. It was also a powerful tool of control, symbolizing the new, centralized, and efficient Norman style of government. The landscape of England itself was physically changed. The Normans were master builders. To control their new territory and intimidate the local population, they built hundreds of castles. At first, these were simple wooden Matanda Bailey structures, but they soon evolved into the magnificent stone fortresses we see today, like the Tower of London and Windsor Castle. These castles were symbols of Norman power, dominating the skyline and serving as a constant reminder of who was now in charge. They also introduced their own style of architecture, known as Romanesque, which influenced the building of countless cathedrals and churches across the country. And finally, the conquest fundamentally reoriented England's relationship with the rest of the world. Before 1066, England had strong cultural and economic ties to Scandinavia. After 1066, England was pulled firmly into the orbit of mainland Europe, especially France. For the next few hundred years, English and French history would be deeply intertwined, leading to centuries of rivalry, alliances, and wars. Most famously, the 100 Years' War. This shift from a Scandinavian focus to a European one had profound and lasting consequences for England's identity and its role on the world stage. So, from the words we speak to the laws we follow, from the castles that dot the countryside to England's very place in the world, the legacy of the Battle of Hastings is undeniable. It was a brutal and transformative event, a single day that ended one era and began another. The Anglo-Saxon world was swept away, replaced by a new Anglo-Norman, one that would eventually evolve into the Britain we know today. The arrow that struck King Harold didn't just end his life, it marked the birth of a new nation. The echoes of that battle on Senlac Hill nearly 1,000 years ago are still heard today, a powerful reminder of how a single day can change history forever. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey back to 1066 interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that shaped our world. Let me know in the comments which historical event you think had the biggest impact. See you next time.